Hi guys, Ray here from City Fan TV, and I'm joined by the boys. Well, none of us are in blue, but we're all City fans. We got Bernard from the Citizen Channel, Colin Savage, who is Press Switch Blue on Twitter. I'm sure you've heard of him. And we've got Mike from Bolt from the Blue. And we're going to have a little chat about football finances today. Today is Friday the 17th. It might as well be Friday the 13th for Everton because they've been docked 10 points for financial irregularities. I think it basically relates to an interest payment of, was it 20 million quid on their new stadium at Bramley Dock, which they held their hands up and said, "Yep, yes, Gov." I think there's a difference of opinion on accounting, and they lost, and they've been whacked 10 points for this. So Colin's going to tell us a little bit about that, and then we're going to try and compare it because Everton got done for one charge. 20 million quid it was, and there's going to be a lot of repercussions because a lot of relegated clubs are sitting knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, hang on, couldn't this be done last season?" So we'll chat about that. But then we're going to compare it to the situations at Chelsea, who are also in the dock, and City, who have got these, in my opinion, totally fabricated 115 charges. And I'll take that. You can take that to the bank. Fabricated 115 charges, but it's potentially we might be found guilty, and we're going to look at the consequences of that. So I'm going to start with Colin. Everton, they've been done a pretty bad one here. But on the other hand, if it was last season, they'd have gone down. So maybe they're lucky.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they've been deducted 10 points. And just to give the background, this is purely about the Premier League's own cost control rules, and they allow you to make losses up to £105 million over a 3-year period. So that's 35 million a year. Now, Everton, the period covered the COVID period, but the Premier League made an allowance for that. And basically, when this commission, and it's the same sort of setup that's going to be looking at our case, not necessarily the same people, basically they decided that when everything was taken into account, Everton's losses over the 3-year period to 2021-22 were 124.5 million. So that's just under 20 million outside an already generous limit. But you're thinking, well, it's not 300 million, it's not 400 million. They have, it's they're only 20 million outside the limit, and a 10-point penalty seems very harsh in those circumstances. But excuse me, Everton did admit to being in breach, which again makes you think.
Sorry, that should be a mitigating circumstance.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Everton had made some claims about their finances, and the Premier League also said that Everton have been moving in the right direction financially. So again, I suspect this 10-point deduction will either get set aside, or it'll be a 6-point deduction or something like that. Teams get docked 12 points, 10 points for going to administration, and Everton are still still going. So Everton, it was interesting. I'm just reading this. Everton gave 6 mitigating factors. And one of them was not pursuing a claim against one of their players who had been arrested. Now, I think we know who that might have been. So they were trying to take credit for not making a claim against him. But they valued this player at 10 million, and that was speculative. Everton said, well, they can play. Everton, of course, have been working because of this situation with Premier League financial fair play. Everton have been selling more than they're buying, so they've been reducing their costs. And Everton said that in the summer 2020 transfer window, they'd planned player sales of over £80 million, and they should have got credit for that. But the Premier League panel said that basically Everton's failure to raise that money was because they were asking ridiculous prices. So they never had any chance of doing that. there's the naming rights agreement for the new stadium and stadium related costs. So because the Alisher Usmanov, who was very closely connected with Farhad Mashiri, who's still the owner, he'd done a naming rights deal for the new stadium, but of course he got banned as under the sanctions regime, and that affected them as well. And Everton cooperated fully. So, but the Premier League, or the panel, the independent panel, how independent they are, we don't know, said that Everton should have planned for a lot of this stuff. You know, it's normal business for uncertainty. So, yeah, I'm a bit shocked at the. It was always clear Everton were going to fail. I think a bit shocked at the severity of the penalty. And what Everton are saying isn't unreasonable. They're saying, well, actually, it's an accounting thing, they've not been done for doing drugs or fielding ineligible players or is there a relation between that side of things and the playing side of things to justify the point?
They're saying they've been punished on the football side of things for what happened outside of football, and they call it an accounting. Some people are calling it an accounting disagreement about how you deal with things. I think we'll just talk a little bit about the potential ramifications. Obviously, I'll say at this point, Everton are going to appeal. By the sounds of it, they're going to appeal both the decision. It sounds a bit odd, but they held their hands up, but I'm not sure what's happening there. But obviously, they're appealing the severity of the decision. Now, I can't see, even if they do a quick, they'd have to do a very quick process because they tried to sort it out last season so it could be done. I think the Premier League wanted to do it last season, so it was done and dusted before the end of the season. I mean, that would have resulted in Everton getting relegated if this had been upheld. Now they're doing it this season. Obviously, they dropped down to 19th. It does, however, give Everton a chance because they're in better form to get back outside that relegation zone. But obviously, they're going to appeal. I don't personally believe that if they're successful, it's not the 10-point deduction might be reduced to 8 or 6, which gives them a better chance of survival. They're not far off from the team at fourth bottom. So. But I think the ramifications, Colin, I was hearing today that some clubs like Burnley and obviously the clubs that were relegated last season, Leicester, Leeds and Southampton, they're not happy. They wanted to be involved with the process. I think Burnley did as well. Burnley always sticking their noses in because they were relegated the season before when they say Everton were guilty of this because it's been going on for 3 years. And I can't remember another club that was relegated aren't happy either. The ramifications are it opens up a massive kind of worm.
Sure, there's only one club can be complaining because there's only one. I mean, the 3 relegated teams, there's only going to be one that can complain, surely.
But you've got to argue, yeah, that's a great point. You've got to argue, has that spending made the difference? How can you link that they've made a loss greater than whatever to staying up? How can you say that Everton spending more money than they should have done has caused Burnley or whoever, Southampton, to be relegated?
I mean, I know some clubs will look at it and say, well, if Everton had been relegated last season, someone else might have stayed up. If Everton had been docked 10 points, you think the team that finished at the bottom, they've got a point. Other clubs are going to say, well, actually, for every position Everton had demoted, every team they dropped down below would have got an extra £2.5 million from the Premier League finishing place money. So, I don't know how many. Last season it wouldn't have been that off the top of my head. It wouldn't have been that many places. But
also, Ray, is that sending a signal to Man City about what they're about to do to us?
No. I'll tell you that for free. No. Okay, it's a totally different thing. But what I'm saying is, from the Everton perspective, we'll come on to the City one in a minute, I think. But from the Everton perspective, you could have 6 or 7 clubs saying, well, hang on, you cost us £2.5 million. Or they might go to Everton or the Premier League and say, Premier League, you were too slow in dealing with this. And obviously, there were 5 clubs who asked to be part of this decision-making process in some way because they felt they were affected. We've seen what happened with Sheffield United? Was it Sheffield United and West Ham? When West Ham were fielded, they had Tevez and Mascherano, and they had problems there. Sheffield United were relegated, and because they and then they wanted to sue West Ham. I think West Ham made an out of court settlement of 20 million quid. This was a long time ago. That we're talking over 15 years. Now, if they can get 20 million quid there, how much do you think someone could try and sue Everton for, and maybe succeed or get something out of court, Colin?
But that West Ham case was a more obvious example of players making the difference. You could see there's a linkage there, isn't there? That Tevez scoring the goals and Mascherano, they made the difference for West Ham, and that Sheffield United were definitely adversely affected by that. But you still can't say that West Ham wouldn't have won those games, but obviously Tevez made a huge difference.
Yeah, well, obviously the clubs are very unhappy. Everton, as I said, whether they get this reduced a little bit, it has a big impact. It'll have a potentially big impact on their players, because they might be able to say, like corner tigers, and say, look, everybody hates us, let's come out fighting. But some of them might just, lose a bit of heart, lose a bit of faith. It's going to be a really difficult one. Obviously, we've seen the backlash today from fans and ex-players and stuff. They're not happy with what's going on. And then obviously
how quick is the appeal procedure for Everton? Is it a month, 2 months, 6 months?
I don't know.
Say no, this is it. That's what we're happy with. That's where it stands. They
have to get another independent panel together to look at this appeals thing, and they've got to really deal with it this season. They've got to deal with it this season. So I think they wanted it done by March or April last year, and it just look how things drag on. Look, City have dragged on for, was it 3 or 4 years, Colin? But look how things can drag on. So let's quickly move on. Obviously, Chelsea are in the dock as well, but I mean, they're another one. I think Chelsea must be a bit worried, because Everton held their hands up and said, "Yes, go, all right, fair enough, fair cop." Chelsea, under the new owners, Bowley, has said, "Look, Abramovich was doing all this allegedly dodgy stuff. Let's be careful." I know not many people are going to probably listen, but you never know. That's what we're saying. But they held their hands up and said this has gone on. Now there's leaks that Abramovich did even more dodgy stuff. Hazard's agent paying him €7 million off the books, and under Ferguson said, we can't afford to get Hazard because we can't afford to pay his agent £6 million. It was done allegedly off the book.
That's why we pulled out the.
Because they kept increasing the numbers. So what I mean is so, Colin, how would Chelsea? Let's look at them briefly first. Will they be worried because maybe they're thinking, if we've owned up, we've got that, we've cooperated, we've owned up that this is what happened. We haven't kept it from when we found out. We told you, but Everton have got slapped down. Do you think the same could happen to Chelsea? Do you think they should be worried that they may, similar will happen to them?
I think Chelsea should be worried because, if you remember, Everton have been docked those points, having admitted they'd overspent. So presumably everything's gone through the books. They've made a loss. They've held their hands up. They've cooperated, and they've still got a 10-point deduction.
Yeah.
Chelsea apparently have been paying stuff from offshore accounts.
Yeah.
And Chelsea have always sailed close to the wind with financial fair play. They've always just avoided it generally because of the profits they make on selling players, which has always raised a few eyebrows. I'm sure we've talked about it before. Yeah. And you do start to wonder, if money was moving offshore. I always had this theory, I don't know proof to it, but that somehow money was changing hands to inflate those fees. And it's kind of a more plausible explanation. So if Everton get a 10-point deduction for being honest, cooperating, and everything's going through the book.
Do you think that Everton would have tried to fiddle this if they'd known they were going to get a points deduction?
No, no.
I mean, they've all held their hands up. I mean, wouldn't it have been easier over 3 seasons to try and fiddle something somewhere?
Yeah, they were trying to sell players. Yeah, you say, yeah, it's not that easy.
Sell one player, they would have been all right, wouldn't they?
Chelsea. Well, we don't know. There are the allegations at the moment. They've not been charged, but from the allegations are saying that Chelsea did fiddle the books. They kept money off the books. Now, we've talked about City's charges and the whole point of false accounting, which is a criminal offence.
Yeah.
So Chelsea, I think, could well be in a lot more trouble even than us. That's assuming we've always said our charges are bullshit. But if you look at the offences we've been charged with, there's a player image rights, where player image rights were played through a third party, but it wasn't offshore or off the, So Chelsea, I think, and there's an interesting theory about Chelsea is that new owners came in and they thought, stuff financial fair play. We'll do what we want and we'll take the slap on the wrist, the fine. Now, what they're seeing is, if Everton are getting a 10-point deduction, what are they going to get? If they've done what they've done illegally, what the hell is going to happen to them? You've got to double that. You've got to be talking about 20-point.
Well, could we have another Champions League in the cupboard?
Well, yeah, that's what everyone says about us, isn't it? Liverpool United fans would have, take away our title, they would want a few more. But yeah,
I think,
I don't think someone actually asked me that before. That I don't think there's going to be retrospective action. They're not going to take titles off them. But I think Chelsea, yes, they may have thought they'll get away with a fine for financial fair play violations, but this puts a whole new complexion on it. The question is, will the authorities take it out of the club because it was the old owners? But you can't let it go, can you?
There's a lot here because obviously it was a previous ownership, but as City have found, I'll mention this, was it the Bennell case, the sex offences? That was whatever 20, 30 years ago. Different ownership, but you still get the punishment because it's the same entity, and Chelsea to the same entity. So there's a you'll know better than me, but obviously there's the on-field issues where they were buying, they had more money than they should have had, and then you've got obviously the false accounting, which is a whole new kettle of fish. So Chelsea could be, in the dock both with the FA Premier League and the authorities.
The question is, of course, when you think back to our case, it's leaked emails, leaked documents. And you can only go on what you've got. So, all UEFA, we always said that all UEFA had, all the Premier League have had is what was leaked. They can't ask for any more than that.
But I thought they could. I thought they were doing some sort of fishing. I mean, you'll have to clue us up a little bit here, Colin. I thought they were trying to do some sort of fishing exercise on City to try and obviously we're going through the court, so but it's taken so long to agree, even to have it reported. They had to go through court for was it months or years to be able to report on a little bit what's going on.
It's a very delicate area because you've got to draw a line legally between what you can ask for based on good, or I forget what a decent suspicion that there's been something wrong, and just fishing, say, give us what you've got, and basically incriminate yourself, and no one in law, is obliged to incriminate themselves. So that's a fairly standard concept.
I mean,
so Chelsea, that would be an interesting one, and they could be in very, very, very big trouble indeed. And people are comparing it to us, but I can't.
Obviously, let's move on to Manchester City. Look, if we are found guilty of some of the charges, then we're going to get, if this is what's happened to Everton, we're going to get something at least similar or more severe to that. But obviously, you've said it many times that these 150, it sounds crazy number. surely you're guilty of something. But you said it boils down to, was it 3 or 5 charges over multiple seasons?
It boils down to 3 scenarios, 3 financial irregularities, let's call them, that UEFA, the Premier League have picked up, and everything else stems from that. So I say the Mancini contract with Al Jazeera, which is peanuts compared to the overall scheme of things, and we've already reached a settlement with UEFA because that Mancini obviously left us in 2013. So but those accounts where we were sanctioned cover that period. So where they're going with that, I don't know. There's the image rights payments, and we know from documentation, we appear to know, that these payments were made to players, from what little we know, via a third-party company. But again, we've said this before, if you go on Companies House website and you look at City's accounts, it has the company listed there. So it's not like we had to hide it offshore. It's there in I forget what the name of the Fordham. Yeah, Fordham Sports Image Rights. There on City's website, Companies House, City's listing on Companies House. It's not as though we've tried to hide it in a completely unconnected company. And we know from the Spiegel articles that UEFA talked to us about that in 2015. And one must assume that was settled. And we pretty well know for sure that because what we don't, all right, it may not have been paid on City's books, but did we declare it to UEFA? That's the important thing. Now, or did we try and hide it as part of financial fair play? If we added it in and UEFA had said, actually, we don't like you playing it through a third party, and City said, okay, then, we've just got to wind up this arrangement. What the Premier League going to do about that? We've been open about paying the money. We've not hidden it. And certainly from 2018, image rights have been paid through the club, not through a third party. So again, that's the second thing. The third thing, it's not really specified, but sponsorship revenues. And we must guess those are going back to the very early days, Etisalat, where apparently Abu Dhabi United Group funded that sponsorship and claimed the money back. And when we went into financial fair play, that was all settled. So yeah, I was reading an article in the Financial Times, the very influential Lex column, and he was talking about, will these charges have an impact on City's great figures? City getting to the Financial Times these days. But, will these profits be affected by these charges? Will there sustainability? And the answer is no, because they relate to years ago.
Yeah.
We're the most scrutinized club in the world financially. We'd be absolutely mad to be doing anything off the books. Excuse me. Yeah. So, there's a lot of nonsense talk, but those are the 3. Those are that from what I can see, what people who know can see, is the core of it. And then if you say, well, you've understated your expenses, then you're into the presenting accounts that aren't true and fair, and then potentially you're into financial fair play because you've understated your income, and the same for the Premier League. So, and then the 115 comes from, for each of those, they've come up with multiple rules that we're alleged to have breached over multiple years. So there might be 4 rules. There might be one set of payments. The Mancini contract might involve 25 of those rule breaches.
Yeah. And I think
you just keep making this point. It's really only 3 things that are the problem. And UEFA, the other thing to make, and we said it before, UEFA knew about all of them well in advance, certainly until 2018, and we weren't charged with them. So if UEFA did, UEFA came afterwards with what they thought was their best shot, which was a very poor shot in the end. They thought they could do better with one of those 3. They would have done.
Yeah. The thing is, I think we're in this situation at the behest of the other Premier League clubs. I suspect, especially the American-owned ones. That's why we're in this position, because the other clubs won't let it lie. They want to, obviously, they can't compete with City on the pitch. They struggle to compete with City off the pitch. And so they're trying to handicap us in any way they can. So that's why I think they're pushing it forward. That's why they're still trying to do this. And that's why, hopefully, ultimately, it should fail, because I don't, like you said, I don't think there's any grounds really for what's going on. We've been looked at, like you say, so many times, and it's just these clubs pushing and pushing and pushing, because obviously if City weren't there, they'd be getting more of the spoils, they'd be getting more money, and obviously they're looking out for their own self-interests.
And of course, one thing we forgot to mention, this is proposed rule change, whereby if you do a deal with an associated, what they call an associated company, you've got to prove that you've got offers on the table from non-associated companies. But we it's so transparent, isn't it? Because there's already provision there for the Premier League to look at all deals above £1 million and decide whether they're fair value or not. So, it's almost actually gives you confidence, doesn't it? That they know we're going to get off those charges, because why would you come up with something like that?
I mean,
City were going to get a £5 million point deduction or something.
Yeah, but I mean, so see, I look at that and think, okay, there are certain clubs where you know who the sponsors are going to be. So you know City's shirt sponsor is going to be Etihad. Okay, so why would you, as any other business, think you can compete with that? So I will suggest most companies that might want to say, well, actually, sponsor City shirts will turn around and say, well, we can't, because they're always going to go to Etihad. What's the point of competing? Unless someone comes along, some ridiculous, Elon Musk says, well, actually, Man City, I'm going to sponsor you for £1 billion a year. I think City would say, okay, you can write X across our shirts. We're quite happy with that. Tag it as whatever you want, But as I said, I don't think other major companies are going to bother. So how can you have all these offers? Are they going to force clubs to open it to everybody?
I don't, I doubt very much they'll survive competition rules, because I say there's already a mechanism in place to assess the fairness of deals. And our ownership's clever enough. Nissan. So Etihad offers 60 million. Nissan offers 55 million. We've got so many. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid, and it's transparent.
The last thing,
and the thing is, someone said this the other day. Actually, it used to be United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, and it didn't matter because the positions might change. I remember when I was at primary school, there were three of us who were top of the three lads who were always top of the class, and I was fourth or third or something, and the top three got prizes. And eventually, I got one, but it was always going to be the same ones. It's always the same clubs. And now we've come along, and now Newcastle have come along, and Chelsea have fallen off a bit of a cliff, and Liverpool have gone through a bit of a bad time. United, and all of a sudden, you could get three of those four not being in the Champions League. You could get Newcastle, maybe Spurs, Villa. Yeah.
There are 8 clubs now, I think. Brighton.
Panic setting amongst those.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could get this situation maybe in a season to come. Brighton, Newcastle, Spurs get into the Champions League. Obviously, City as well, unless we've been relegated for this. But there's a risk, but other clubs, they've got. I think the difference is why it's. I think what we're doing now, and this is for another video, but what we're doing at City now is so much better than what's gone on in the past. Is because everybody's got money. In a previous video we talked about the Deloitte league table of top 20 clubs in terms of turnover, and 11 of the top 20 are in the Premier League. Okay, so everybody's got a lot of money, whereas back in the 90s, all your few clubs, 80s and 70s, all your few clubs had the big money. That's why you got the same names every time winning it because they had the money. The money led to success. The success led to what's the right word? Kids being idolizing those clubs because everybody wants to follow a winner. That's why eventually at City, everybody wants to follow a winner. I mean, my last question is to Colin and people. Okay, I know this is you're going to laugh at the question, but people want to know about opinions on a scale of 1 to 100 about Manchester City. On a scale of 1 being 0 to 100, 0 nothing sticks, and 100 everything sticks, or some enough sticks to cause us problems. What chance do you think City have of getting done for Summit serious?
Well, the most obvious. What I say, I think the actual substantive charges are weak. They're even weaker than UEFA's, and UEFA's got chucked out. But of course, where CAS found against us was non-cooperation. So on a scale of 0 to 100, I'm looking at a 10 or a 15. They might. We might get fined for non-cooperation because we've been through the courts and the courts have told us to cooperate. And as we said before, there's this kind of grey area where you supply the documents that the accuser asks for, but you don't give them any more than what they need. And again, we made the point before that City don't do this capriciously. They take very extensive legal advice, both on Simon Cliff internally and from our external legal advisors. It's not like they're saying, oh, no, we're just not going to do it. They take legal advice on this. And I'm slightly more confident we won't get done for non-cooperation because the process has been somewhat different. And we have gone to court over cooperation. But we'll see. But as far as
are we any nearer knowing a time scale still, or does this mean anything to time scale wise?
It'll be years. I'm going to make a quick last point. Something that Nick Jackson, a City fan, has said. I can't remember if he's in the counter or not, but anyway, he says a few hours ago he said this. He said, "Forget about court. I just found out City are guilty thanks to Stan Collymore and Elton Wellesby. Come on, lads. Must do better. You both have about as much clue as I do on what's going to happen to City."
Elton Wellesby, the Everton fan, this is it?
Yeah.
Elton Wellesby. You can imagine Everton. We said before, Everton being a bit upset because it seems a grossly disproportionate punishment. You almost think it's aimed at us rather than Everton, don't you? I mean, but yeah, you can understand that. But I mean, I tend to take Stan Collymore seriously because his knowledge of legal and financial stuff is almost unmatched. Among
par with Stefan Bolson, I hear. He's on a par with Stefan Bolson, is our Stan Collymore.
Anything Stan says, is I tend to take.
Let's not talk about Stan Collymore. That would really pitch us into the depths of conversation.
Yeah, potential legal issue.
Him and his let's say colourful past. Guys, I'm going to say thank you very much. Chatting about finances, we've been talking about Everton, a little bit about Chelsea, and of course about the treble winners, Manchester City. And hopefully that little insight from Colin has enlightened you all. Thank you so much for your contribution, guys.
That's okay. It's always good to talk finance. And the interesting thing is, of course, it's the last King of the Kippax is in the back now being printed. And I was waiting to the last minute, hoping the accounts would come out so I could at least go out writing about finances, because the deadline was last Monday. And the deadline was this Monday. The accounts came out Wednesday morning. So I couldn't even do that.
You didn't go out with the bang, Colin?
No.
Well, on that note, we say thanks to Dave and Sue, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Dave and Sue for 35 years.
35 years, yeah.
35 years.
35 years. Nearly as long as I've been alive. They've been doing King of the Kippax and then some. But no, big
quite an appropriate time scale, really, isn't it? Think of the last time we won a trophy, 35 years, and obviously That, yeah, a nice symmetry.
Well, I did in my last article, I did a little piece going in 5-year chunks about where the club was, from 88, and of course you can get to 93 and 88, was it 88? Yeah. And all the ups and downs, 98, where were we in 98? And then 10 years later, it's the takeover. So it was very serendipitous how, the 5-year gap worked out. 2003, we're at the Etihad under Kevin Keegan, and then 2008, the takeover. 2013, we've just won we hadn't just won the league, but Pellegrini was about to win us the league. So, yeah. So that's the end of King of the Kippax, and I didn't get to write my last article about the accounts.
I'm sure they'll have a Christmas special, Colin. Guys, we will talk long into the night. That's the end of this video, but thanks a lot to Bernard, Colin, and what sounded like the snoring Mike. Thanks a lot, guys.